We are in a remarkable period of world history when, for the first time in 100 years, there is no real competing ideology to the ideology of democracy, the free enterprise system, and you allowing the individual rights of men and women to move them toward their destiny. And so to the right direction today is learning to help your neighbor, to come together as individuals for the betterment of your community, to be a volunteer to help others. Young people all over the world need to be moving in that right direction if we are to make the best of this new century we are now embarked upon. And nowhere is this truer than of the children and for the children of Africa. With all its potential, Africa is behind the pace of development, behind the revolution that is taking place in the information and technology areas. In too many cases, nations have followed outdated economic models and Soviet and Marxist models. We are still working through the brooding history and shadow of slavery. We are still worrying and trying to resolve borders that were created without heed to anything but the whims of colonialism. Independence granted without a fare thee well, except, of course, for the lingering political and corporate interest in exploiting Africa, in exploiting the materials and the wealth of Africa. That has to stop. This is a new world. This is a new age. We have seen for too long wars that were aided and abetted in accordance with the strategic dictates of a titanic power struggle. I am not an African expert, you know that. I'm a soldier. And for most of my adult life, I was a soldier in that Cold War struggle. And very often, my exposure and my work in Africa involved that Cold War struggle. But I've seen the changes in the last several years that have brought me such joy as I have seen the end of the Soviet Union. I'll never forget especially what it was like on that wonderful day when Nelson Mandela was inaugurated, and I was privileged to be there with thousands of delegates. And everybody saw things through the lens of their own experience. Some people through the struggle that brought Nelson Mandela to that point. But as a soldier and a former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, perhaps one of the most moving moments of my life, and the most moving moment that day, was when I looked and saw, finally, Nelson Mandela heading up onto the podium to take the lectern. And as the crowd swelled with applause and enthusiasm, I'll never forget looking at the 4 white generals who were the commanders of the South African Defense Force, my colleagues, and I watched as those 4 white generals who used to be the oppressors stood up to pay honor to their new president, their new commander-in-chief. And I knew at that time that apartheid was dead and in the dustbin of history forever, with communism where it belonged. It was a wonderful moment. And another part of my life dealt so much with Nigeria. I visited Nigeria several years ago and tried to convince the generals in charge that their day was over, that they had to put the country on a path to democracy. And 2 days before General Abacha took over the country, he called me to say, "General, you don't understand the problems here. You just don't understand." And I said, "Sani, don't do it. We will never understand. This is the way of the past. This cannot happen. Don't do it." He did it anyway. And I watched the terror that he imposed upon so many wonderful Nigerians over those years. And then I was privileged last year to be part of President Carter's delegation that went to Nigeria and supervised the elections which brought in a freely elected democratic president. And now Nigeria is on the path to success. So this is all in the past. This is all in the past forever. We are in a fresh time now, a new time, a time to begin again. And it is the National Summit on Africa which has given us the impetus now to move forward. And for America, it is a time to not ignore Africa, to embrace this plan, and to make sure that every element of American society, our great businesses, our political leaders, our military leaders, all of us, come together with the leaders of Africa to put that past firmly behind us. Now it is trade. Now it is democracy. But above all, now it is time for our children. We have got to get the AK-47s out of their hands and books into their hands. When we look When we see so many millions of our children, the African children are our children, suffering from AIDS, we know that we cannot stand aside. We shudder when we see such things. So this is the time for action. I'm a soldier. I know a lot about plans. But I also know that plans never won a battle. Plans just get you to the battlefield. The battle is won by soldiers and leaders and the weapons that will be necessary to make sure that this plan is put into execution. And so I am here this evening to encourage all of you who have worked so hard to keep up the fight. This is really the time for you to get energized and to make sure that your weapons are ready for the tasks ahead. There will be obstacles, there will be enemies, but we're going to prevail. We're going to prevail because we are right. We are going to prevail because this is the time, the 21st century, to use the wealth of the world to benefit the whole world. And I know we'll be successful because of the leadership that has been shown by all of the delegates here, all of the ambassadors here, as well as you and your colleagues, Leonard, Herschel, and so many others. And so I congratulate all of you for this marvelous summit, which has touched the hearts of Americans across this land. And I wish you all the best as we now take on the great battle that is before us. I am one of your soldiers, General Robinson. You call on me. God bless you all, and thank you.